What happens when a Hollywood legend walks into what should be a friendly morning chat show, only to have the conversation take a dramatic and uncomfortable turn that leaves everyone in the studio speechless? That's exactly what happened during an episode of Today with Jenna and Friends, when beloved actor and filmmaker Emilio Estevez reached his breaking point. Live on air. Estevez had appeared on the show to promote his new independent film, a deeply personal project centered around immigration, family separation, and the human cost of political policies. From the moment he stepped onto the set, it was clear that this film meant more to him than just another role. It was a mission. The interview started innocently enough. Host Jenna Martinez opened with the usual friendly questions about the film's premise, its inspiration, and the long journey of securing funding. Estevez answered thoughtfully, describing the real families he met during his research and how their stories moved him to create a film that would give voice to those often overlooked. His tone was sincere and humble, revealing a rare vulnerability. Co-host Rachel Kim followed up with a lighter question about working with the young actors involved in the project, and Estevez visibly brightened as he praised their dedication and raw talent. Marcus Thompson, another panelist, chimed in about the challenges of making independent films in today's corporate entertainment landscape. Estevez agreed, explaining that studios and streaming platforms increasingly prioritize franchises and predictable formulas, leaving little room for human stories that challenge audiences. Still, he insisted, such stories deserve to be told, regardless of market trends. Up to that point, it was a respectful, engaging interview. And then everything changed. Jenna leaned forward with a smile that suggested she was about to shift gears. "You know, Emilio," she began, "you come from a Hollywood dynasty, the Sheen family. So why make all these small independent films? Do you ever feel like you're trying to prove something or step out of your father's shadow?" The studio fell noticeably silent. Estevez's expression shifted, subtle but unmistakable. He calmly replied that he didn't see his career as an effort to prove anything to anyone, and that for over 3 decades he had simply been making the films he believed in. But Jenna wasn't finished. She laughed in that familiar way talk show hosts do when they're pushing a sensitive topic. She pressed further, bringing up his father, Martin Sheen, and his brother Charlie Sheen, suggesting that growing up in such a famous family must create pressure to forge his own identity. This time, Estevez sat up straighter. He reminded her that he had intentionally changed his last name back to Estevez early in his career for that exact reason, to stand on his own without trading on his family's name. Marcus tried to ease the growing tension by praising Estevez's impressive body of work, but Jenna interrupted again, this time stepping over both her co-host and her guest. "Sure," she said, "but let's be real. Your brother Charlie had a much bigger mainstream career. Does that ever bother you?" At that, Emilio Estevez's patience began to wear thin. He questioned why the interview had suddenly veered away from his film and toward tabloid territory. Still, Jenna pushed. She referenced Charlie Sheen's well-publicized struggles and asked if Emilio ever felt the need to distance himself from the chaos of his family name. That was the breaking point. Estevez leaned forward, voice steady but full of restrained anger. He called out the direction of the interview, accusing Jenna of prioritizing gossip over substance. He reminded her that he had come onto the show to discuss a film about real human suffering, not to dissect his family drama for entertainment. He criticized modern media for reducing meaningful conversations to cheap headlines and personal attacks. Jenna tried to defend herself by claiming she was just asking what the audience wanted to know, but Estevez didn't buy it. "Are you?" he said sharply. "Because it seems like you had an agenda before I even sat down." The room froze. Jenna, for the first time in the interview, looked genuinely stunned. Jenna blinked a few times, trying to regain her composure after Emilio's pointed accusation. "Agenda? That's a pretty serious claim," she said carefully. "We invited you here in good faith to talk about your film." Emilio didn't flinch. "Then let's talk about the film," he replied, his voice calm but laced with frustration. "Let's talk about the family in the story who gets separated at the border. Let's talk about the 8-year-old girl who doesn't see her father for 3 years. Let's talk about a system that treats human beings like numbers. That's what I want to discuss." Marcus quickly jumped in, eager to move the interview back on track. "Yes, absolutely," he said. "Emilio, can you tell us how you approached telling such a sensitive story? What was your process?" But before Alio could answer, Jenna interjected again. I think we can do both, she insisted. We can discuss the film and still acknowledge the context of who's making it. Alio, you've been in this industry your whole life. Some people might say that you making a film about immigration is a little performative, given your privileged background. How do you respond to that? The studio fell completely silent. Rachel's eyes widened and Marcus recoiled slightly as if he'd just witnessed someone cross a line. Alio stared directly at Jenna for a long moment before repeating her word back to her. Performative? His voice was low and controlled. So, what you're saying is that because I grew up with certain advantages, I'm not allowed to care about social issues? I'm not allowed to use my platform to tell stories for people who don't have one? That's your position? I'm not saying you're not allowed, Jenna replied defensively. I'm just saying some critics might view it that way. I'm giving you a chance to respond to those potential criticisms. Alio didn't accept that answer. What critics? He demanded. Who specifically has said this? Or are you couching your personal opinion as something you heard from unnamed sources? Jenna's cheeks flushed slightly. I'm speaking generally about the broader discussion around privilege and activism in Hollywood. It's a valid topic. Alio nodded sharply. It is a valid topic, he agreed, but that's not what you're doing. You're using it as a weapon to undermine the work itself. You're implying that because of where I come from, my concern for human rights is less genuine. That's not journalism, Jenna. That's cynicism dressed up as insight. Rachel stepped in again, trying desperately to redirect. Alio, what do you hope audiences take away from this film? What message do you want them to leave with? His posture softened as he turned to her. Thank you, he said sincerely. What I hope is that people see these individuals as human beings first, not as statistics or political talking points, but as mothers, fathers, and children trying to survive and build better lives. I hope it opens hearts to the consequences of policies that often feel distant and abstract. That's beautiful, Rachel said gently. It was the first moment of calm since the interview went off the rails. But Jenna wasn't finished. You have to admit, though, she continued, the film clearly has a political angle, and given the current climate, some people will say you're taking sides. Alio closed his eyes briefly, as though summoning patience. Art has always been political, he said. The Grapes of Wrath was political. Schindler's List was political. Selma was political. Telling human stories that intersect with policy isn't propaganda. I'm not telling people how to vote. I'm telling them to see the humanity in others. But you must have a personal political stance, Jenna pressed. Are you comfortable sharing where you stand on immigration policy? No, Alio said flatly. I'm not. Because my personal politics are irrelevant. The minute I make this about my beliefs, it stops being about the people whose stories I'm trying to honor. Jenna leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. I find it interesting that you're being so defensive. These are standard questions. Every filmmaker who touches political material gets asked them. Defensive? Alio's voice finally rose. Jenna, for the last 15 minutes you've asked me about my father, my brother, whether I feel overshadowed, whether my activism is performative, and now you're trying to corner me into declaring my political views live on air. You haven't asked me a single meaningful question about the actual film. Nothing about the cinematography, the performances, the story, or the score. Just personal attacks disguised as journalism. Marcus jumped in quickly to rescue the conversation. Alio, I'd love to hear about your cinematographer. The trailer looks visually stunning. Alio exhaled, grateful for the lifeline. Thank you, he said. We shot on location in 3 different states. Our cinematographer, Lisa Chen, has an incredible eye. We use natural light and long takes to really immerse viewers in the story's emotional landscape. Marcus nodded. It looks stunning. And the young girl who plays the daughter, she's phenomenal. Where did you find her? For the first time, Alio actually smiled. Maria Gonzalez. She'd never acted before. We did open casting, and the moment she walked in, we knew. She brought such honesty and depth to the role. Working with her was one of the highlights of my career. Jenna cut in again, her tone sharp. I'm sure it makes for a great story, discovering a talented unknown actress. Very Hollywood. Very convenient for your narrative. Est's smile vanished as quickly as it had appeared. What exactly are you implying now, Jenna? He asked, his tone sharp. I'm not implying anything, she replied coolly. I'm just pointing out that it's a very traditional Hollywood narrative. Successful director discovers unknown talent and gives them a big break. It's been done 1,000 times. Elio didn't hesitate. There's no redemption story here because I don't need redemption. He shot back, his voice turning hard. Yes, giving opportunities to new talent is something that happens in this industry. But you're saying it like it was cynical or calculated. That girl gave the performance of a lifetime. She deserved that role. I'm proud to have helped introduce her to audiences. Jenna gave a tight smile. I'm sure you are. Something changed then. Elio sat very still, then looked directly into the camera before turning his gaze back to Jenna. When he spoke again, his words were slow and exact. Jenna, I want to understand something. What is it about this film or about me being here that bothers you so much? Because this stopped being an interview about 10 minutes ago. Her expression hardened. Nothing bothers me, Elio. I'm doing my job. I'm asking questions that I think need to be asked. If you're uncomfortable with that, maybe that says more about you than it does about my questioning. Your job, Elio repeated, is to ambush your guests with personal attacks. Your job is to make actors defend their right to care about social issues. Your job is to reduce every meaningful conversation into gossip and gotcha moments. Jenna didn't flinch. Nobody ambushed you, she snapped. You're a public figure who chose to make a political film. You don't get to hide behind art when it's convenient and then claim you're being attacked when someone asks you direct questions. Elio leaned forward. Direct questions? You asked me if I was trying to escape my father's shadow. You asked if I was jealous of my brother. You said my empathy for human rights was performative. You mocked me for casting an unknown actress. Those aren't direct questions, Jenna. That's a hit job. Rachel cautiously put a hand on Jenna's arm. Maybe we should take a breath here. This is getting heated. But Jenna yanked her arm away. No, Rachel. He came on this show. He agreed to an interview and now he doesn't like the questions. That's not my problem. Marcus finally spoke up. Jenna, I think Elio has a point. We've drifted really far from talking about the film. Maybe we should refocus. Stay out of this, Marcus, she snapped, not even looking at him. Her eyes stayed locked on Elio. You want to talk about the film? Fine. Let's talk about how you, a wealthy actor with every imaginable privilege, decided to tell the story of marginalized people. Let's talk about whether that story even belongs to you. Let's talk about whether you actually consulted with immigration advocates or if you just assumed your Hollywood perspective was enough. Elio's face reddened. Now you're questioning whether I did my research? Whether I actually spoke to the people whose lives this story is about? You didn't ask me that. You didn't give me an opportunity to explain the 2 years I spent working with immigration attorneys, advocates, and families. You didn't ask because you don't care about the answer. You care about the attack. Jenna fired back instantly. I care about accountability. I care about calling out privilege when I see it. And what I see is another rich Hollywood actor who thinks he can solve the world's problems with a movie. I never said I was solving anything, Elio replied, his voice shaking now with controlled anger. I said I was telling a story. That's what artists do, we tell stories. We shine a light on things that matter. I'm not claiming to be a savior or a hero. I'm claiming that I made a film I believe has value. And I'm questioning that value, Jenna said coldly. That's my right, Elio stared at her. It absolutely is your right. But you haven't seen the film, have you? That stopped her. Even she hesitated. I've seen the trailer, she said finally. I've read the synopsis. I've read reviews from the festival circuit. So that's a no, Elio cut in. You haven't seen it. You're attacking me based on a 2-minute trailer and opinions written by other people. And that's what you call journalism? I don't have to watch it to ask valid questions, she insisted. Yes, he said firmly, you actually do. If you're going to question the value of the work, its integrity, my motivations, then yes, you need to actually engage with the work. Otherwise, you're just performing your own kind of theater, pretending to be a serious interviewer while chasing a viral moment. The studio fell dead silent. Crew members stood frozen off camera. Rachel and Marcus looked like they wanted to disappear entirely. Jenna's cheeks were flushed now. A viral moment, she said. You think that's what this is? You're just mad someone finally pushed back. You Hollywood types are so used to being praised. One little bit of pressure and you fall apart. I'm not falling apart, Elio said softly. But his voice was steel now. I'm calling out exactly what this is. You invited me here under false pretenses. You told my publicist this would be a conversation about the film. Instead, you used your platform to take shots at me, my family, and my work. And the worst part, you try to act like you're doing it from some higher ground. Jenna laughed sharply. Moral high ground? That's rich coming from someone who spent his entire career benefiting from nepotism. That did it. You could see it happen in his face the exact moment he was done. He stood up slowly and removed his microphone. Nepotism, he repeated quietly. There it is. That's what this has been about the whole time. You resent that I come from a family in this industry. Instead of talking about the work, you decided to make this personal. Jenna rose to her feet too. I'm making it personal? You're the one who can't handle basic questions. Basic questions. Emilio shook his head. You know what a basic question would have been? What inspired this story? How did you find your cast? What do you want audiences to feel? Those are basic questions. What you did here, this was something else entirely. Then leave, Jenna said coldly, gesturing toward the exit. If you can't handle the heat, walk away. Prove everyone right about privileged actors who can't take criticism. Emilio stared at her for a long moment, then looked at Rachel and Marcus. Estes turned back to Rachel and Marcus before leaving. I'm sorry you two got caught in the middle of this, he said. You both asked good questions. I wish we'd had more time to discuss the actual film. Then he looked back at Jenna. And as for you, I hope whatever you were trying to accomplish here was worth it. Because what you've done is ensure that anyone watching this will remember your hostility far more than anything about the film we could have discussed. I'll take that risk, Jenna replied icily. Estes picked up his jacket from the back of his chair, draped it over his arm, and turned toward the camera one more time. To anyone watching who's interested in the film, it's called Borders of the Heart. It opens in limited release next month. I made it because I believe these stories matter, regardless of what happened here today. Rachel stood up quickly. Emilio, please, maybe we can restart. We can cut this segment and begin again. I really would love to hear more about the film properly. He gave her a sad smile. I appreciate that, Rachel. I really do. But I don't think that's going to work. The tone has been set. The agenda is clear. There's no resetting this. Marcus stood as well. For what it's worth, man, I think what you're doing with the film sounds incredible. I'm sorry this went sideways. Thank you, Marcus, Estes said, shaking his hand. I appreciate you trying to keep things on track. Jenna remained standing with her arms crossed. So you're really doing this? You're really walking off in the middle of a live interview? I am, Estes said simply. Because staying here and continuing this charade doesn't serve anyone. It doesn't serve the film. It doesn't serve me. And frankly, it doesn't serve your audience. They tuned in to hear about a movie and instead they got a spectacle. They got honesty, Jenna shot back. They got real questions instead of the usual softball garbage that celebrities expect. Estes shook his head slowly. You keep calling it honesty, but there's a difference between honesty and hostility. There's a difference between tough questions and personal attacks. You crossed that line repeatedly, and when I called you on it, you doubled down. That's not journalism, Jenna, that's ego. My ego? Jenna's voice rose. You're the one who couldn't handle a challenging interview. You're the one running away. I'm not running, Estes replied calmly. I'm making a choice. I'm choosing not to participate in whatever this is. And before you twist this into some story about a fragile actor who can't handle criticism, let me be very clear. I've been in this industry for over 40 years. I've done hundreds of interviews. I've been asked tough questions about my work, my choices, my family, everything. And I've always engaged, always answered honestly. But this wasn't that. This was something else. And we both know it. Rachel stepped slightly between them. Emilio's right. Jenna, this got out of hand. We should have reined it in earlier. Jenna turned on her sharply. Don't you dare take his side right now, Rachel. We're supposed to be a team. I'm not taking sides, Rachel replied firmly. I'm saying that as your friend and co-host, this wasn't our best moment. We can admit that, Marcus nodded. Yeah, Jenna. I think we need to acknowledge this went to a place it shouldn't have. Jenna looked between her co-hosts, then back at Estes, then toward the cameras. You could see it. The realization this wasn't playing out the way she thought it would. Fine, she muttered. Fine, if everyone wants to pile on me, go ahead. I asked hard questions. I refused to do a celebrity puff piece, and apparently that makes me the villain. Nobody's calling you a villain, Estes said quietly. But you weren't asking hard questions, Jenna. You were trying to provoke me. There's a difference. A hard question would have been asking about the challenges of representing a community I'm not a part of. A hard question would have been about the ethical considerations of telling these stories. A hard question would have been about the impact I hope this film has on real policy conversations. Those are hard questions. What you did was try to bait me into an argument. And you took the bait, Jenna replied, though her voice had lost some fire. I did, Estes admitted. I defended myself and my work. I'm not apologizing for that, but I also know when a conversation has become unproductive. This is that moment. He began to walk toward the exit. Alio, Rachel called after him, I'm really sorry. I hope you know that. He turned back, nodded. I do, Rachel, and I appreciate it. You know what the worst part of all this is? Jenna called out. You might actually have a good film. You might have something important to say, but now, all anyone is going to remember is you walking off our show. You did this to yourself. Estes stopped and turned slowly. No, Jenna, what people will remember is why I walked off. They'll remember a host who was more interested in creating conflict than having a conversation. They'll remember someone who used their platform not to enlighten, but to attack, and they'll make their own judgments about whether my choice to leave was justified. I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with it too, Jenna said, though her voice wavered. Good, Estes replied. Then we're both comfortable. And he walked off the set. His footsteps echoed through the studio as the camera stayed on the three remaining hosts. Jenna sat down first, her face unreadable. Rachel and Marcus followed, unsure what to say. Marcus cleared his throat awkwardly. Well, that was certainly unexpected. Rachel looked straight into the camera. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have our cooking segment with Chef Antonio. The show cut to commercial, but the damage was already done. The internet exploded within minutes. Clips of the interview flooded social media. People dissected every exchange, every word, every raised eyebrow. Some sided with Jenna, arguing she was right to ask tough questions and hold a powerful figure accountable. Others defended Estes, insisting Jenna had crossed a line and ambushed a guest for views. The debate raged across timelines, entertainment sites, podcasts, and think pieces. Everyone had an opinion, and everyone was talking about it. Ironically, Borders of the Heart, the film at the center of all this, received far more attention than it ever would have from a normal promotional interview. Whether that attention translated to ticket sales or meaningful discussions about immigration, that was another question entirely. But one thing was clear. The clash between celebrity and media, between accountability and hostility, between truth and narrative, had just found its newest flashpoint. Both Estes and Jenna made choices that morning. Choices about how to engage, when to push back, and when to walk away. And the consequences rippled far beyond that studio. So now the question is yours. Was Jenna right to push Estes the way she did, or did she cross a line? Was Estes justified in walking off, or should he have stayed and continued the conversation? Let me know what you think. Have celebrity interviews become too soft? Or has the media gone too far in the other direction?